Hi, I'm Chris Flanagan, a postdoctoral researcher at Syracuse's Graduate School. With me today is Jesse Merandy, Director of Digital Humanities at Bard Graduate Center. Hi, Jesse.
Hi, thanks for having me, Chris.
No problem. Today, we're going to be talking about Jesse's non-monographic dissertation, Vanishing Leaves, a study of Walt Whitman through location-based mobile technologies. So Jesse, just to kick things off, tell me a little bit about the project Vanishing Leaves.
Yeah, Vanishing Leaves is what I call an LBME, or a location-based mobile experience. Essentially, it's an experience that's based in Brooklyn Heights neighborhood of New York City, and it using mobile devices, GPS, and high-speed internet capabilities leads you around the neighborhood to learn about the life and work of Walt Whitman, and also prompt users to compose at those various places. So it's a little bit of a combination of two kinds of factions of location-based projects. One, location-based mobile games, and location-based mobile narratives, which basically geolocate information at places so that as you move around those various locations, you encounter information at the sites of learning. So yeah, it's a kind of a fun and playful, but also educational experience that I'm hoping motivates people to get out, move around, and learn at these places, which were important to Walt Whitman. But yeah, there's a lot baked into there, and my of course, as all dissertations have a lot of different thinking and theory behind them, this project has all of that embedded in the kinds of place-based learning and through mobile technology.
Great. So what actually made you, in the beginning of your time at the Graduate Center, what made you want to undertake a non-monographic scholarly project rather than the traditional monograph that many scholars, myself included, ended up writing?
There's a couple of reasons. One, it was the subject matter that I was interested in and the concepts I was interested in kind of learning more about, and also forwarding as far as technology as learning tools. I really kind of, those were the subjects I was deeply interested in. And so part of that thinking about how to bring the ideas of place-based learning to light was to create something that actually made those ideas visible through a practice. So making the looking and learning about mobile technologies actually went hand in hand with the ideas of bringing people to place to learn. So it was the tools that I became interested in were an extension of the ideas I was interested in. And it was a great way to look at both of these kinds of areas, which were inspiring to me. The second part was that my background was in web design and web development. So I had a strong skill base working with online media and thinking about and actually the experience of building online projects, websites. And it really kind of lent itself, as I was interested in these ideas, I also had some background in actually realizing those kinds of projects. So it was kind of a natural marriage of those elements that brought me to thinking about how I could best use those skills in the creation of this capstone project. And I really felt like, for me, a traditional dissertation would not really get into those ideas that I was interested in the same way that I could with something like this location-based mobile experience. So I think that's important, is to thinking about how the direction that you're going in and what you want to accomplish. And a lot of people, the traditional dissertation works really well, but in this situation, it definitely felt like I wasn't going to be able to accomplish what I wanted.
Absolutely. And so how did you initially navigate, Joe, this decision to make a mobile kind of application? within the fairly traditional academic setting that we're all used to?
Well, there was there there was a kind of learning on the go, and when I set out in my the dissertation program at CUNY, I was not really sure where I was going to go. I was trying to think about my past experiences in my master's program. I had done work with a online scholarly journal based on Walt Whitman and American literary studies. But I felt when I got to CUNY that I was trying to, walk the more traditional line. But I kept on, as I was working on my coursework, kept on gravitating towards building final projects that were digital in nature. So if I may, I'll just screen share really quickly here and show you one project. Geez, let me just switch here. So one of the kind of like recurring ideas I had was thinking I was very interested in Walt Whitman as a New York writer. I had come from my master's program, which was in Camden, Rutgers and Camden, and that is where Walt Whitman ended his life. And I actually moved to New York and brought that connection of working on that online scholarly journal, and I brought that work with me to New York and found this rich history there of Whitman. So I kind of got pulled into Whitman, but I also was continuing to think through these, like how scholarship could be presented and realized online. So in my master's degree, we are dealing with a very limited set of technologies, and the mobile technologies had not advanced yet to the point where I could even have considered them for use. But this project was I had built a kind of multi-view of this famous Walt Whitman poem, Crossing Brooklyn Ferry. And part of a project for a capstone project was this Walking with Whitman downloadable walking tour, which essentially was some of the root ideas that I continued to pursue as I went through my degree. But this let you download MP3s. We all remember the iPods of days gone by. It basically, you downloaded the MP3s and you downloaded a map, which you printed out, and you brought the map with you. When you got to the locations on the map, you would play the tracks from the that you downloaded, so that there was a kind of the essence of the project I was working on was baked into this, of going to these locations and using mobile devices, although a lot less advanced at the time. So my kind of like to go back to your question about the decision to do this project and to go through the kind of what you've described here, like navigating the academic setting, part of that was starting with these prototyping of projects in my coursework. So I was already thinking about these, even though I wasn't certain that I would end up doing a dissertation or like culminating my degree with this project. These kind of seeds were planted already. And that was finding some professors who were amenable to me doing digital work. And this was, 10 years ago when I started my degree. There was a lot less acceptance of those kinds of projects, but some people were excited about those kinds of alternate scholarly projects, particularly for final projects, which a lot of the professors knew nothing about the technology I was using, about web-based projects. But were looking closely at the content. So that was important to me, was to continue to like establish that right away. Is even when I was thinking about doing projects outside the box, there was always a rooted, concerted effort to make my projects scholarly, rigorously scholarly, and to kind of think through the thinking, theory, and of using any technology, but also the subject matter I was working on. So that also was instilled. And I must say, I just need to mention at CUNY, we have an interactive technology and pedagogy program that I participated in with a couple of great professors, Steve Breyer, David Jaffe, and I worked with them on really thinking through the implementation of technologies and the thoughtful reflection and kind of that important work of building and then doing the reflexive process where you are thinking back about what worked, what didn't, and documenting what you had discovered along the way, as well as your process. Those were really important. That groundwork I had in my already established as I moved forward in my degree. But there were no structures at CUNY for advancing to create a non-monographic dissertation. So there was a lot of learning on the fly. And I think part of what I was forced to do was help them establish the structures, since they did not exist. Help find other examples that wherever I could. I mean, as you know, there are very few of them, but even the ones that existed were really helpful in kind of showing that it's possible, but also thinking through how my project, although different than those that existed, might be possible. So having a prototype was really important to show my ideas and to show what I was building off of and how I wanted to move forward. The second part is finding the allies within the system. So at each step, as I was going through my coursework and got to the dissertation stage, maybe not at the time, I didn't know, but was forming those relationships that were going to be important. I needed advocates and I needed allies to do something that was not an established path forward to the degree. So those were all really important parts of navigating the academic setting. Particularly at CUNY, in my institution, where my dissertation was the first all digital dissertation at the institution. So there was a lot of legwork and a lot of a lot of time spent doing things like meetings with EOs, meetings with the library, explaining to them just what it was I was looking to do.
Well, you mentioned professors and allies, so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you actually put together a dissertation committee for obviously such a unique kind of project, and obviously assemble scholars who could both bring scholarly feedback, but also be able to engage with you on the more esoteric technological level of your project.
It's a great question. I'm coming from an English literature background, that my degree was going to be in English literature. So the more I got into teaching and technology, that was kind of born out of my interest in composition and rhetoric, which is really an interesting path to get to where I got. But the thinking about writing and the process of writing and composing and building really were kind of essential to what I was thinking about as composing and building, just in a different medium. So at the get-go, it felt really important to have somebody who specialized in that topic and that was grounded in a more traditional aspect of our degree. Composition and rhetoric is one field that you can explore within the English degree at CUNY. So that also was about this active process too of like teaching, and not all the other, I mean, I could have gone into British literature, American literature, but those aspects were not as focused on the teaching. And that was really important to me as well. So I kind of my first dissertation committee chair was Sandra Pearl, who was a comp-rhet specialist. And she did not understand the technical side of what I was doing at all. but she had worked with me on other projects that I submitted and always loved them. And so she supported the work I was doing without having to understand it. And that was really important at the beginning, that I could formulate the idea and move the process forward. So that goes through the coming up with, the preliminary dissertation description and getting my reading lists together and a lot of the like formal process that are built in. But once I got to the actual building stage and what this thing was, I really started to feel like I needed to diversify who I was working with, and to find somebody who could actually, I guess I would say, work across those lines. So from the technology to the actual subject matter. So I'm talking about thinking about Whitman as a historic figure, and his work. And I'm thinking about composition and rhetoric, the actual act of composing and composing in place. And then I'm thinking about the technology, and I needed somebody who could at least think across those lines. And so at a certain point, I requested to change my dissertation head to Matt Gold, who I had worked with some in the CUNY's ITP program, but somebody I also knew from the English program. And he has been working on a lot of digital humanities projects. He has been institutional and kind of pushing forward and advocating also for digital humanities works at CUNY. And I knew I needed that as well to really get full buy-in from the institution. And so it kind of was like a natural progression, but it really is necessary to have somebody on your committee who understands what you're doing. And fortunately, the committees you can build at CUNY, you need to have two faculty members in the English program, and the third can be in another discipline if it is appropriate to your project. So I kept Sandra on as an important part of somebody who could continue to advise on the comp ret elements and the thinking through writing and place-based writing, and also just thinking about Whitman as a writer in Brooklyn Heights. And Matt became my kind of DH English, it kind of like thinking through all of how this came together. And then the third person I asked to join my committee was Steve Breyer, who I had mentioned previously. I worked with in the ITP program. And although he was from the urban education program, although he was not tech savvy also in certain ways, he had helped me to think through a kind of thoughtful process of using technology. And it's one of these, like, even if you're working in technology, you can't know all the technologies, so trying to have that kind of breadth is really difficult. But at the core root is always these same kind of processes of building, thinking, changing, modifying, and then building again. It's kind of this feedback loop between research and building that I found kind of as I was going through this process. So that when I advise other people about how to build their committee, I think you need those strong allies. You need people who understand what you're doing, but not everybody on your committee has to know the nuts and bolts, but they should be supportive. You should not, for instance, I would not have kept Sandra if she was like, I don't understand why you would want to do a mobile-based project. Why won't, that kind of conflict in any dissertation committee would not be helpful towards achieving your goals. So I really felt like I needed to think about the scholarly aspects of my project at the same time as I was thinking about the technological elements of my project, which included the building and which included implementing thinking and all that scholarship into the project. So there was a lot of thankfully, I had somebody like Matt Gold at the institution in the English program who could help me. And Matt really, he went to bat. He put in the word with our EO of the English program, who thankfully was really into gaming and mobile gaming, just coincidentally. And so even though he was not fully, you know, like the project had not been built yet, he was able to you know, Matt was able to get the EO on board so that we could move forward. And that was really key. It continued through, you know, as we went through the formal processes of submitting, you know, various aspects to the program. Also, you know, at each stage, they knew what I was working on then, and they knew I had a team that was going to help me finish this. Although it was going to take, it took a little longer than I might have liked, but that's another question.
They almost always do.
Yeah.
Would you like to share a few images of the project with us on screen?
Oh yeah. Oh, I actually had that old project up for a long time there, Chris. So let me bring up another window with some of the project. The first part of the project, this is interesting. Let me see. Oops. Apologize.
It's okay.
Gotta bring it up here. So let me. Okay. You should see the GC Mission Network. Are you able to see that, Chris?
Yeah.
So this is my game was broken into multiple parts. One was, there's actually 3 parts of what I actually ended up submitting for my dissertation. So from the idea, which I actually explained to you, which is the mobile game, that was built on the Eris platform, which was built out of the University of Wisconsin in Madison.
Mm-hmm.
Really great project. And I had some friends who I'd worked with on that project that were I was able to dialogue with and work out some issues. But as you can see here in the kind of middle of the screen, there's a video, which this project's at gc.vanishingleaves.com. This was the website companion to the actual downloadable app which goes on your phone. So part 1 of the game is the app that you download. That is basically the major part of once you go out into the field, you're basically just interacting with your mobile device.
Yeah.
There's a map, as you can see on this screen here, and the map has certain points on it that indicate where to go, kind of guide points. So you travel to those locations, and once you're there, you encounter characters. The kind of playful element of the game is that you're trying to save Walt Whitman from this nefarious organization that wants to wipe him from human history. So your job is to find this hidden manuscript copy of the first edition of Leaves of Grass. So as you have characters that are helping you along to try to locate that manuscript, but also you interact with the evil organization as well as they try to divert your efforts. So it's kind of was meant to be playful, and that was based in as I mentioned earlier, the location-based narratives, which are like a story progresses as you move around to these different locations. So the part 1 was the mobile app. Part 2 was this website I built, which had the necessary how-tos, some explanatory information, and then also in the kind of efforts to be transparent, all of the information which you are delivered as you went from Walt Whitman worked as an editor at the Brooklyn Daily Eagle. So when you arrive at that location, you're presented information about the Brooklyn Daily Eagle in the Eagle Warehouse, which is the now standing building, which replaced the building where Whitman actually worked, but it's on the same site. So you're actually standing at this location. And so I had to do a lot of research into these places. And what you're seeing here is kind of a then and now about the place. All this information is delivered to you on your phone, but reading a lot as you're moving around is very difficult. I knew that even though I created safe places to stop and you could read, I just had this feeling that it was necessary to create spaces where you could go back to online and revisit content and further inform yourself if you wanted to. So part of the like self-directed learning experience is, you know, I'm not telling you everything you have to learn. It's up to you to go through and do the extra reading or do the extra research. It's not a roadblock to completing the game. There was already so much in there with the different aspects between the reading and then the writing cues that I built in. So this website acted as a house for that information. And also there's these audio files. So I recorded and performed as Whitman all of these various poems, which are, you also experience at the places. So for instance, at the Crossing Brooklyn Ferry location, which is the kind of final dramatic conclusion of the game, you can listen to the Crossing Brooklyn Ferry poem, which is at the same site where Walt Whitman would have launched over to go to Manhattan from Brooklyn on almost a daily basis to go, you know, to work in Manhattan. And also he was a great theater buff and he walked the streets of Manhattan. He just loved the excitement and activity of the streets of Manhattan, particularly Broadway. So there's a lot of like, you know, there was other aspects of my game too, like recording and performing audio, writing a script, developing a script, coming up with these graphics, which you see here. For instance, there are a bunch of characters that I made for the game as well that help you along the way. So you can see down here, for instance, Agent Cash is a tech expert who helps you along with like technical related kind of facets of the game. And there's another character who is basically, as you see here, is me. But this person is the historian and the person who tells you all about the history of Brooklyn Heights and Walt Whitman. So I had to make the graphics as well. And so there was a lot of like, these are all parts of the game that became embedded both in the mobile app and on this site as a kind of way to mitigate anybody who might say like, where's all of that research you did? I wanted to make it very apparent that there are over, you know, there are a substantial amount of kind of historic, this historic information is all here for you. It's not hidden. The work I did, I wanted to make transparent because I didn't want those challenges about maybe people might say, you know, this is a game, it's too lighthearted, it's not scholarly enough. So I was very conscious as a, like conscientious of thinking through that aspect, because another part of building a non-monographic dissertation is that you will be challenged as to the validity of the work you're doing and whether or not it checks those boxes of what is done traditionally. So I actually was doing extra work all along the way just to make sure that those questions were addressed in advance. I think it's worthwhile to set, while you're setting out, to say, to ask yourself, who might not only my allies be, but who will my detractors be, and what might they question about the work I'm doing? That's extra work for you as the person building it, but to finish the project and have to deal with those and just ignore them would be a huge mistake, I think, because it's likely you will find that people will ask you, even if not in a confrontational or combative way, those questions will arise. So this is part one of the like online, the app. And then finally, I apologize. The final part was my white paper. So to further complicate the process of what I did, I had to, in a detailed way, explain both the foundational literature, the thinking and theory of what I was doing on the Whitman element and on the comp red element and on the the use of mobile technology. So there was, it was necessary for me, and thinking through with Matt, and also as I just had spoken about, like thinking through what questions might be asked, and also how to make this project useful for those to come. It was necessary to document all the work I did to make that visible. And that's something Andrea Visconti did as well on her dissertation. Really, I mean, she documented more than I mean, she went to levels beyond what I even did. I feel like probably because she was one of the first, having to, catalog all of her work was really important. For me, I had a different project with different facets, and I also felt like it would be necessary for me to do that. It also helped me think through what I was doing so that I was not operating in my personal vacuum of this very unique project. Constantly going back to the theory, going back to example projects. I mean, there's many mobile games and there's mobile narratives, but nothing quite like what I was doing, but there were approximates. So also just listing out those things that have come before so that people could learn more about those, and that, you're not just starting at square one, you're embedded in a community and a tradition, although non-traditional, that has been developing. And I think that's really exciting part of this too, was to be able to go through that. So this white paper, as we were calling it, a kind of formal scientific term, but that paper was kind of a illustration of the ideas in a taken out of the game, so that important also moving forward as technologies change and become obsolete, that this would stand as a record of the ideas I was thinking through, description of the project, and all the work I put in. So yeah, those are the kind of three prongs of this project that ended up taking shape.
How about we finish off with a few questions?
Yeah.
What about non-monographic projects, kind of more generally, reflecting on your own experience, to think about, this as kind of, as you said, as a bigger tradition, a growing tradition, in a way of a new way of approaching the dissertation. I wondered whether you think talk about what advantages can these non-monographic type projects bring to students over the more traditional monographic approach?
Well, there's both, I think, benefits and drawbacks. It's a part, as a personal case, as me being a case study of this, it's been kind of a learning as I've gone along in progressing through my not just my academic career, but then my professional career. So I had been working full time as I was working on my dissertation as a web developer at CUNY. At a certain point, that kind of development work, which was much in an office, not collaborating, but working on, developmental projects for the institution's website, I moved to Bard Graduate Center. So a lot of the work I was doing, project-based building and thinking through digital humanities projects, really benefited me as I applied for that job and was able to acquire a position at working as the head of the digital media lab there, which I've developed with the institution over time into this more digital humanities / digital exhibitions position. So that has been really helpful in my advancement. I was able to acquire a full-time position before I finished my dissertation. So even though I was ABD, I was able to use that project as a showcase for the work I was capable of and the work that I wanted to continue to investigate. That was a need at the institution. The person who I replaced was moving to NYU. And so that was another ally I had developed during my PhD, Kimon Karamidis, who was really kind of a friend, but also a person that I thought through a lot of these issues of teaching and technology with. And so, you know, that path led me to that person, which led me to that opportunity. But I also have been doing the actual necessary groundwork beyond like just a recommendation. So I think that was key. I was already focused on what I wanted to do, and that helped me advance my career and move outside of kind of the traditional academic lines. So going to a teaching position, I had always thought I was going to be investigating alt-ac career opportunities, working with digital humanities, either within an English department or as digital humanities has become a more kind of commonplace position as well in institutions. I was hoping to look for those when I finished my degree, but I was able to find a position and start working on the ideas and the kinds of projects I wanted to right away. As a drawback, working full time and trying to complete a dissertation is not recommended. I don't think it's very complicated to allot time for both and to move, because the job is the thing you're doing and getting paid for, whereas the dissertation is the thing you also have to complete, but there is not the same pressures of like immediacy. I was forced to keep the dissertation going while already, you know, working all day, 9-to-5 job, and then coming home and trying to rally and work on my own project. So that was a long few years of the actual building, the writing, and at times exhausting and challenging. There was all the meetings I had to do and the extra things of meeting, you know, to move the degree process along, getting extensions for my degree several times so that, you know, even though I was nearing their top limit of allotted time to finish the degree, that they would extend and allow me to keep working. So those were challenges. And I think for a student to be able to think about the possibilities that meet their interests and their directions, you know, that is something you're going to want to invest in. You know, I probably knew early on that I was not going to be a traditional scholar, but I think in previous conversations with you, we had discussed that I had been thinking about how it also is difficult to switch from a track where you're doing all AC work, where you're working in like digital humanities projects and project-based outcomes, and then trying to maybe switch tracks and doing more traditional scholarship and writing. Potential to do that kind of work as well. So that for a student, it opens up new opportunities, but it also opens up new challenges. And I don't know that they're all fully understood in academia.
Absolutely. Great. Well, then finally, were there any other issues that we haven't really covered yet that you think really stood out between your approach doing a digital dissertation to the more traditional type that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I think there's a few, like if I were to give myself advice years ago, I feel like it was natural for me to pursue this. It was something I wanted when I knew what I wanted to do. The direction kind of reveal. It was easy to overcome those challenges because I wanted to do it. I was going to like make it happen, and the formalities of the degree process, the structures that are in place. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we are now navigating as more and more of these projects are becoming both possible and people are interested in doing them. You know, as institutions change, as academia is confronted with how to accept and use these non-traditional projects towards tenure, there's a lot of conversation going around and the dust has not settled. So for me, I had to move ahead in the best way that I could with the structures that were in place, because, you know, finishing your degree is just one stage in your larger academic career, in your professional career, if you do a non kind of traditional academic job. So thinking through those scholarly markers and what you want to achieve in the dissertation level, but then beyond, was important. I think following your interests still remains. If you're interested in movie making and are going to make a movie dissertation, you know, you should follow that path, but understanding that certain opportunities will open because of that, and certain opportunities will be more difficult to achieve. You know, we have heard about the comic book dissertation. You know, that's an incredible project, but it also is going to align you with certain ideas and certain people and put off maybe more traditional scholars. I was always thinking about, you know, how can I bring together the traditional scholarship and the ideas that I want to? So we're acting as a bridge, I think, to a future that is more accepting of these kinds of projects. But we're not there yet. And that means as people who are embarking on non-traditional dissertations are going to have to work harder, do more work. As you saw from my dissertation parts that I outlined, there was a lot of work that it was not, nobody, when they're writing a traditional dissertation, has to worry about graphics on their website. You know, it's just an extra thing, and they all take time, and that time added up. Writing a script, I have never written a script before, but I did that, you know, like the dialogue that went into the game and all of the interactions. And then finally, there were barriers. I had to meet with the library about how to archive the dissertation. Through that process, I had to submit the code to the back end of WordPress. I had to submit the databases that went into building the WordPress. I had to archive the mobile OS, the Eris application. I had to make a video to document what my project was in case all the technology fell apart and could never be reconstituted as it was in the future. And all of that had to be archived through new processes through the library. So that was another thing. So all of those mean that you know, that was the institution I got my degree from. I'm hoping in the future that there's more effort towards creating structures that support students, that give them the training and skills-based training that will help them to think about different kinds of projects. And also that a project like mine will make the next persons to come along more achievable, because they've already gone through what's needed to archive, what's needed for the different programs, like depending on what degree you are getting. Mine was in English, but what is somebody in urban ed or somebody in comparative literature, what do they have to do? So I think get advice, find people that can help you in your institution, lean on your strengths, and you have to be vigilant, and you have to really not give up, because those challenges at any stage can be enough to, I would say, paralyze your degree process, which, you know, there were several times where I had to take long pauses to, you know, to rethink what I was doing and to be able to move forward in a way that was livable. Because working 9 to 5 and then going from 5 till 10 on your dissertation is a sure recipe for stress. And sometimes, you know, you miss out on other parts of, you know, things you love to do, anything outside of academia and work. So, yeah. you need strong allies, friends, partners, a community, a village to support you.
Yes.
And I'm laughing, but it really mattered to have those people. So, you know, there's a lot more to talk about. I'm always happy to, but I discuss those. I welcome anybody to read my white paper, which does show a lot more of the kind of nuts and bolts of what I did and how I did it, which I think will be helpful. And also to just as a kind of project that's outside of the box, to think about what's possible that's hasn't been done before shouldn't be the reason not to do it. You know, a location-based mobile experience, you know, I think if I just come with that straight away, that I don't know that I would have gotten the same support. So it takes time, and those relationship you build are key to that.
Great. Well, I think that's probably a great point to end on. Thank you for talking to me today, Jesse.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much for including me in this, I think, really important project. And I hope that it's helpful to those to come. Yeah, that would be a great outcome of the work I put in, to be honest.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks so much.